Proszę Państwa, naszym gościem dzisiaj jest republikański kandydat na burmistrza Nowego Jorku, pan Tom Allon. Dzień dobry panu.
Dzień dobry.
Dzień dobry.
Mr. Allon, you've got a huge background in publishing. You're the CEO of Manhattan Media, which publishes over a dozen small hyper-local newspapers. And at some point, you even employed former Mayor Edward Koch.
Yes.
How did that happen?
Ed Koch was our movie reviewer for about 20 years. I had the idea in 1990 when I was a journalist. I profiled Ed Koch, and it was a year after he left the mayoralty. And I said, "You have all this free time on your hands, Mr. Mayor. What do you do in your free time?" He says, "I go to the movies 3 days a week. I love movies." So the next day I called him and I said, "How would you like to be our movie reviewer?" And he said, "How much would you pay me?" I said, "I don't know, $50 a week?" He said, $50 a week? I wouldn't cross the street for $50 a week. I said, "Ed, we're a small newspaper." He said, "Call me when you get bigger." And he hung up. So I called up 4 colleagues in the newspaper business, other newspapers that were part of our chain, and I said to each of them, "If you contribute $50 a week, I think we can get Ed Koch to be our..." They all said yes. I called him back the next day. I said, "Ed, how about $250? He said, "Great, when do I start?"
So how long did he write for you?
He didn't miss a week for about 15 years.
But while he was working for you, did you talk to him about being a mayor and all the challenges that he was facing?
Yes, I mean, listen, I covered him when he was mayor. You know, I was a journalist then. In fact, in 1987, 2 years before he lost for his 4th term, I did a big profile of him, and the headline was, "Can Ed Koch make a comeback?" Because he was in trouble then. He wouldn't speak to me because I had a columnist at my newspaper who used to criticize him every week. So that actually, it was a hard piece to do as a journalist because your main subject didn't speak to you. But I spoke to 25 people around him, and it was actually the best piece that I wrote because I got a full portrait of his chances of making a comeback. So and then when I decided to run a year and a half ago, I invited him to lunch, and I said, "Ed, I'm thinking of running for mayor. I'd love your advice." And he gave me advice. And then at the end of lunch, I said, "I'd like to also, not today, but at some point in the road, potentially ask you for your support." He said, "Well, Ray Kelly is my candidate. If he runs, I'm going to support him. And if not him, Christine Quinn, because she named a bridge after me." And I said, "Ed, I gave you a movie column." He said, "I love the movie column, but a bridge trumps the movie column."
I think we need to move into you as a candidate.
A little bit,
focus on you.
Sure.
You are running from Republican ticket.
Yes.
But until recently, you were a Democrat.
Right.
You think Republican Party is better in New York City to?
Listen, first of all, I believe in nonpartisan elections. I wish people didn't have to choose Democrats, Republicans, conservative, liberal, because people are a mix of many different things. We have had 20 years now of Republican mayors in New York. Rudy Giuliani and Mike Bloomberg both won 5 terms as Republicans. So I think in New York City, people look at the person, the candidate, not the party, and they want somebody who they can trust, who they think is competent, who is going to be a good manager, and is going to keep the city safe and fiscally sound. And that's really, I think, what the Republican Party stands for, at least the liberal part of the Republican Party that I stand for. We need to make sure that we continue the policies of Rudy Giuliani and Mike Bloomberg in public safety. We need to keep the budget. We actually have to bring down taxes and bring down the cost of government. I think government has actually become too expensive and taxes have gone up too much in New York. Property taxes have gone up over the past 10 years by 18%. That's unsustainable. And we have a looming budget crisis that if, God forbid, one of the Democrats gets elected, we're going to have a $10 billion bill unfunded for money that the unions believe they're owed in back pay because the mayor hasn't negotiated that contract. We also have a $70 billion budget now compared to a $45 billion budget 10 years ago. That's 55% growth ahead of inflation each year. That's unsustainable. Just to give you some context, when Rudy Giuliani was mayor, the budget went up 10% a year ahead of inflation. That's better. It's still not great. When I'm mayor, it's going to go down. The budget is actually going to decrease.
And where are you going to look for savings in the budget?
I think we have to look at the size of government. We have between 300 and 350,000 city workers over the past 30 years. But there's agencies in government that are inefficient. There's parts of government that can be consolidated that are not using technology efficiently. We can, through attrition And also by offering city employees part-time or flexible schedule work, especially those who want to take care of their families and don't want to work 40 hours a week, we can bring down the cost of governments. We have to insist that city workers make a contribution to their health care. If they even contributed 10% of their health care, that would save us $500 million a year. We need that money. We need to either put it into more police men, we either need to put it into our education system, or we need to give it back to the taxpayers. Taxes are just way too high in the city.
So can we count on lower taxes or no raises in taxes when you become mayor?
And you have to remember, a lot of private business owners of Polish descent are watching.
By the end of my term, there's a couple of things I want to make sure happens. By the end of 4 years, taxes will start coming down. Unemployment will be below 5%, which is almost 10% now. And the graduation rate and the college readiness rate of our students will go up to 80% graduation rate, and college readiness will go up to 75%. Right now, it's 25% college readiness and 60% graduation rate. That is the makings of disaster. We're going to have a second-rate city if we don't fix our public education system.
I want to talk about public education, but before we go into
Sure.
that topic, speaking about the parties, you also recently received the nomination of the New York State Liberal Party.
Yes.
What does this nomination mean to you?
It's something that I'm very proud of, and I'm proud to be the Liberal Party candidate. The Liberal Party has been a very powerful party in New York State for back to Theodore Roosevelt. Back to Franklin Delano Roosevelt in the 1940s. It has been a party that has elected many mayors and governors. It elected Fiorello LaGuardia back in the 50s. It elected John Lindsay. In fact, in 1969, John Lindsay did not get the Republican nomination. He had just the Liberal line, and he won just on the Liberal line against two other candidates. The Liberal Party will give me the ability to run both as Liberal and hopefully as a Republican, and run a fusion candidacy and win over a Democrat.
So if you don't get a Republican nomination, your name
My plan is to still run
be
in the general election as a Liberal, and I could do exactly what John Lindsay did and win against 2 or 3 other candidates.
Mr. Allon, except from publishing, part of your background is in education. You taught at Stuyvesant High, one of the best schools in New York City. You helped establish 2 high schools in the city. With that background, how do you assess Mayor Bloomberg's school reform?
Sure.
Has it worked, in your opinion?
You know, I think the mayor has tried very hard, and I think some things have gotten better. Even the mayor admits that the needle did not move far enough under his leadership. He actually said that in an interview in the Atlantic Monthly recently. What the mayor has, I think, missed, and everybody is missing in the society, is that the focus needs to be on recruiting and forcing schools of education to train teachers for 3 years before they go into the classroom with classroom training. You know, back in the early 20th century, when there were rising mortality rates in New York, there was a report that came out from the Carnegie Endowment for Education that said that doctors are not being trained properly, that they need 3 years in hospital settings, in the emergency room, in order to become trained before they become full doctors. 100 years later, in 2010, the National Association that accredits education schools said the exact same thing. Teachers are not being trained properly. They need the same kind of training that doctors have. They need to be 3 years in the classroom before they become full teachers. Why do we entrust our kids and their brains to go into an operating room every day with a teacher that has no experience? We have to stop that. There's a number of other issues that need to be addressed that I think the mayor hasn't addressed. Vocational education, I believe, has to be expanded. You know, not every kid is suited to go to a 4-year liberal arts college. Germany has a very smart program, and other parts of Europe have vocation.
Poland does too.
Poland does as well, where you can go on separate tracks. You know, you're either an academic student in high school or you're a vocational student, you're prepared for a trade. I would look to the unions of the city to get involved in high school education so they can apprentice kids for, you know, whether they become mechanics or whether they become plumbers. You know, I've even said to my son, who's a freshman in college in Ohio, you know, he told me he wants to major in English. I said, how about double majoring in English and plumbing? That way when you come home, I won't have to support you.
Sounds like a plan.
Right, exactly. Then I won't have to support you when you get out of college.
Now, very quickly, a big thing recently has been the bus strike in New York. What's your assessment of how Mayor Bloomberg
the mayor
dealt with
handled
it?
I think, very well. It was a tough decision for the mayor to make. And I wish it hadn't gone to that last stage where there had to be a strike and parents and their children had to suffer for a couple of weeks. I mean, the mayor took a strong stand, and he should. We spend over $1 billion a year transporting 150,000 kids around the city, more than twice as much in New York as it does in the second most expensive state in the country, Los Angeles. So the mayor has identified that we can save a couple of $100 million a year. I'm now very curious to see them follow up on that and see what the actual savings will be, because that's part two.
Well, Commissioner Walcott said they saved $80 million in this 1 month.
Well, just by not having the school, but let's see what the long-term savings are. If they've identified $300 million in savings, this is the template of what we need. And again, as I said, there's all these union contracts that are coming up for renegotiation. You know, the mayor, I don't agree with the fact that he hasn't negotiated with the unions for 4 years, and they haven't negotiated with him for the past 2 years because they're waiting for somebody who's a pushover to become the next mayor. We need a mayor who's going to be strong and is going to say to the unions, you know what, we're all going to walk into a room together, we're going to negotiate your next contract, but no one's walking out without making a sacrifice. We can't go backwards, but going forwards, we will pay you more for productivity gains, and we're going to come up with a solution so that you're happy and we're happy, but we can't go backwards and pay you $10 billion. That doesn't exist in the city. The next mayor has to be the mayor of the taxpayers, not the mayor of the unions.
Let's talk about your fiscal views. You
Sure.
said that you want to lower the taxes, which is greatly appreciated.
Sure.
What do you think about the minimum wage?
Sure. I wrote a piece in the Daily News about a year ago that now is getting attention in Albany. It got attention then, which is that we should have a dual minimum wage, meaning there should be 2 minimum wages, one for people under the age of 22 and one for people over 22. The philosophy behind that is it's very difficult for people to live on $7.25 an hour, you know, if they're raising a family or they're supporting a spouse. So people over 22, by and large, are the ones that are getting married and about to start families. We should raise the minimum wage for those people. But if you're a kid trying to get yourself through college, or you're in college trying to support yourself, or you're a young person just trying who's on your own, then $7.25 a week might be, sometime an hour might be enough. But where people are raising families, we need to give them living wages. And again, this is an example of the way that I think and my creative ideas that I think will help the city. It's not black and white. There's third ways where you can come up with ideas that help business owners, but also protect workers.
Illegal immigrants, what's your take on this?
You know, my parents were immigrants in this country in 1956. I was the beneficiary of them coming here, and my brother and I were the beneficiaries of public education. That's how we became successful. I'm incredibly sympathetic to immigrants. You know, listen, where possible, we should allow people, particularly those that are contributing to society and are workers that we need. So I think we should try to come up with whatever ways we can to make immigration easier and legal.
You often say that the last thing you wore is the politician.
Right.
Isn't it hard to run against names like Lotta or Thompson or Christine Queen, not being a politician? And how are you trying to put your name out there?
Right. I mean, first of all, you know, I think the distinction I'm trying to make between a politician, I want to be a public servant. People who are politicians, and in my mind, they're always thinking about what their next move is. You know, how do I move up that ladder? You know, I'm now the city council member. How do I become the borough president? Then how do I become mayor? I don't play that game. I didn't get into politics because I want a career ladder. I want to help the city. I want to help the kids of the city wake up in the morning and say, if I work hard in school and do my job, I'm going to do better than my parents. That's the reason why I got into this. I'm going to take a pay cut going into the public sector. I want to give back to the city that's been good to me and my family.
Just before we entered the studio, you mentioned that your background is Hungarian and some Polish.
Yes.
You have some Polish roots?
I believe I have Polish roots. You know, my mother was Hungarian. My dad was also from Eastern Europe. I know we have a number of relatives from that part. I have not studied my family tree carefully, but I have a feeling I'm going to now look much more closely and find Polish roots. My brother is an architect. His business partner for many years was Polish. They were very good friends also with Janusz Kapusta, who I've met many times. And also a good friend of mine is Alex Storozinski at the Kościuszko Foundation. So I feel that I have a lot of affinity with the Polish community. And I'm sure that I'll be able to find some family members that come from Poland.
So next time when you come in, we have to tackle into your family tree a little more.
Happy to. I look forward to it.
So speaking of Polish friends, last year you met with Pulaski
Yes.
Business Association in Greenpoint. I know you had a long discussion on issues that are facing the city. What insight did they?
Sure, it was a great meeting with the Pulaski Association. I think they liked me. I certainly liked them and learned a lot from them. You know, these are smart businessmen who have come to this country, businessmen and some businesswomen, who have come to this country who are frustrated by being entrepreneurs in New York or contractors or businessmen. They're frustrated by the red tape they find in city government, by the hidden taxes, which are really fines. And so when I walked away from that meeting, it was with a lot of insight into, and I'm a small business owner myself. I know how difficult it is to be a business owner in New York. We have to stop regulating, stop taxing and fining people who are actually creating jobs. Because you know what? They're going to take them to New Jersey, they're going to take them to other places, and we need to make New York City business friendly. The mayor, again, I think has tried in many ways to make the city business friendly to larger businesses. I think for smaller businesses we can do better, and I will do better because I'm much more sensitive to that. And that was a great meeting. I look forward to going back to the Pulaski people.
Well, also, the point is, you want to lower taxes, downsize the government, help the private entrepreneurs a little bit, because these people have to, you let go from the public offices, they have to find a job.
Right,
in the
right. I
private
mean,
sector.
listen, again, we don't want to lay people off from city government. We just want, through attrition, we can get it down to below 300,000 workers. You know, again, government also can help create jobs through public-private partnerships. We have to rebuild the city. We need, you know, there's infrastructure issues, there's roads, there's bridges, there's tunnels. You know, we have to work, and other cities and other countries are actually leading the way in bringing in private money to help fund what we would normally call public investments. That is also a way to put people back to work. We have to wage a war on unemployment in the city, because the best way to raise taxes is actually get more people working and paying taxes. If we get to our unemployment rate below 5%, that expands our tax base, we get much more money in, and we can lower taxes for the people who are paying taxes.
It was a pleasure having you on our
Thank you,
program. We'll definitely look what's going on with your campaign. Wish you good luck.
Dziękuję.
And thank you very much for coming to our program. I think our viewers will learn a lot about the candidates, and especially you.
I appreciate that.
So we wish you good luck.
Same here.
Dziękuję.
Thank you very much for coming to our show and learning Polish
And
before
learning
the
Polish.
show. We really
I look forward to
appreciate
learning more. And I know a couple of phrases, now I need to learn some more.
So next time you come in, we'll talk about your Polish background.
Fabulous.
Let's give it.
Fabulous.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.